Yeah, I'm still not gonna get over that. How is this series still the lowest seller? I mean, I have heard some reasoning for this, like there was a lack of quantity of toys, which does seem plausible on top of the previously mentioned angry Karens. And this has now led to, unfortunately, an overcompensation product to the point that I do legitimately feel pity for the wallets of many Japanese fathers. That said, I wouldn't have as much an issue from the actual show's perspective if these toys, aka McGuffins, remain thematically important. For me, this series was the last one I could unequivocally say pulled it off right, with every key and power-up feeling significant in some way, especially in this quarter of the series, when we also happen to get a new member and all of her accessories. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's take a look at the second quarter of Gold Princess Precure and the blazing debut of a new heroine. Yeah, I know that was a little cheesy, but come on, you gotta go with this kind of stuff sometimes. We open with a scene that I'm sure Kamen Rider Kiva would approve of. Haruka, of course, tried to approach the obvious Six Ranger, totally normal cosplayer in the middle of nowhere. Inspired by her, our pink lead decided to take up the violin, which of course prompted her to get some advice from the Blue of 1001 Talents. Together, they went to pick up her violin from Geppetto here, whom after hearing about Haruka's sudden interest in it, just decided to very generously give her one for free. Like, seriously dude, those things ain't cheap, and you're just giving it to someone whom for all you know is just doing this on a whim. On top of that, she ended up picking the first violin he had ever made because of a very standard Precure reason. To her credit, Haruka didn't want to take such a priceless possession, but the old guy insisted. And he would likely come to regret that decision. Later, she met with the masked cosplayer once again, who gave her a very personal lesson. Thank you, little Miss Dark Flame Master. Actually, I'm not even that far off, as unsurprisingly, not only was she a part of the villain faction, but she was also... I know there's an obvious joke here, especially considering the VA, but I've already kind of done that, so instead, let's just go back to a classic. That attack is making a comeback, you know. Anyway, I do like the application of contrasting ideals here. Basically, Twilight is taking the position of a royal who leads through refinement and dignity rather than familiarity like Haruka usually does. In some cases, that can work, like leading by example and everything, but ultimately, it shouldn't be the absolute, as not only does it cut you off from others, but also from yourself, which is very fitting for this character as we'll later see. Anyway, the Dark Princess of course led the attack for this episode, with some help from Shud. Oh yeah, this dude did kind of develop a thing for her.
I ain't even going near that.
Anyway, she used her black dress-up key to unlock a power-up for Shut, allowing him to create a stronger red variant of the Zetsuborg out of Geppetto's dream. As usual, we got a great, very well animated fight. But more than that, I really like this exchange between Haruka and Twilight, where again, even though the latter's beliefs were warped, there was some truth to it, and it would actually play a big part in Haruka's arc later. But that's for another day, as the team regrouped to finish off the monster violin. You forgot the goal! That's like the most important part, isn't it? With that, the day was won, and Haruka continued her violin lessons. An overall great debut for a cool new rival character for Haruka, who more than even close was able to challenge her ideals. Granted, it probably could have used less of this dude. It also introduced an interesting new mechanic with the black key, which on top of just having a great design, adds an interesting new wrinkle by powering up the villains and their monsters. I mean, I know it's a bit of a trope, especially in toy properties, to basically give the villains an evil black variant of the hero's weapons, but I still think it's just cool, and it does give a sense that they are overcoming an evil counterpart to themselves. It's just a pity, as far as I can tell, this key was never made, and in fact, they mostly skipped over any sort of Twilight toys. They kind of made one key, but more on that later. Episode 14 featured Noble Academy getting ready for Family Day with everyone coming to visit for the day. Haruka was especially excited to see her little sister Momoka. Hey Doremi, could you give this girl a reality check on what real little sisters are like? Hell, this episode was even animated by Hiroyuki Kawano, one of the most prevalent animation directors for the Doremi franchise, which you can kind of tell in his episodes, as he does end up making the Precure look a little more on the Ojamajo side. It doesn't completely work for this show's very distinctive designs, but it's not bad either. Anyway, after the opening, where in a nice touch they removed Twilight's mask, the Harunos arrived, but the youngest among them didn't seem all that excited. By the way, it's worth mentioning that this VA was an accomplished child actress who played this role at the age of just 13, and for her age, she pulled it off well, which shouldn't be too surprising, as her previous role was for Rin Kaga and Bunny Drop. Oh, no. No, get out here before anyone starts discussing the manga's ending. Oh please, Minami, try and cover this up with some very unsubtle Yuri as though you're greeting your future in-laws. Thank you. Anyway, Mocha continued to be more than a little sour, though to be fair, it was somewhat justified. Same reaction I had when I saw the ending to the anime adaptation of The Promised Neverland. But yeah, good humor, mostly based around characters acting a little over the top. Gonna take a guess and say this was a Yoshimi Narita script, and yep. And just like a Narita script, it had some decent drama, as after the inevitable falling out with Momoka, Haruka's teammates spoke with each of the Haruno sisters. Both assured the sisters that the other didn't hold any ill will towards them. In the case of the younger sibling, and in fact the whole family in general, they were just worried that Haruka might be lonely. And when she showed no signs of such, Momoka lashed out. It's overall a very touching tale about appreciating the values of a supportive family. And just like the last episode, this would also kind of play into the conclusion of Twilight's arc during this part of the series. Oh yeah, she and Shut also launched another attack, though interestingly, even though they used 3 cores of the Haruno family, they only managed to produce 1 Zetsuborg. I guess it kinda makes sense since they all shared the same dream of seeing Haruka's dreams come to fruition. But it's a little disappointing that the Monster of the Week was no different than any other. Still, a good fight, like pretty much every fight in the series. Seriously, it's hard to write for this stuff sometimes. Rolling right into the next episode, we got a fairy spotlight specifically for a noisy little chicken. As it turned out, the fairy siblings, yeah, I still can't figure out the genetics behind that, were in fact still apprentice servants to Kanata, with Aroma having previously failed his first test into becoming a full-time servant, as pointed out by Miss Shamor. You think you're worthy of a 2-star Goku uniform? Man, I wish I could do more Kill Kill references. Ultimately, she did allow both fairies to take promotion exams the next day, and casted a spell on them, resulting in a Purple Hayate. Yeah, this was also a human fairy episode, with both of the season's mascots getting cute designs that match well with their true forms, especially the hair, which thankfully didn't make it look like they had receding hairlines. Unfortunately, as much as I would have loved to see more of Puff with Mama Minami, this was an Aroma episode, and predictably, he didn't do a great job at this whole butler thing, with him dragging Haruka around instead of the other way around and not listening to any of her direct requests. Still, being a good friend, Haruka went along with her butler's plans, leading to some fun interactions, as well as some good development for Aroma after he obviously failed his butler exam. As a result, he almost got himself isekai'd until he was rescued by Sebastian 2.0 here. I'm not even really kidding, this butler was named Oikawa, likely as a reference to Izo Oikawa, Sebastian's VA. He wasn't voiced by him as he had already moved on to other projects, but it's a cute reference nonetheless. Still, I digress, as the big takeaway from this was Roma realizing that he had never taken Haruka's feelings into consideration, hence why he failed his test. This especially hit hard when his mistress for the day tried to shoulder all of the blame for his failure. And he would get a further wake-up call when Twilight launched another attack, this time with Locke, much to Shut's chagrin. Maybe next time you should try donating more to her livestream. He ended up using Oikawa as a victim of the week, leading to one of the best Monster of the Week fights for this part of the series, as not only did have the usual amazing animation, more great work from Shiko Fuji by the way, we also got some good emotion from Aroma as he called in for reinforcements when Haruka struggled on her own. Also, Twilight got a great one-liner here. Of course, they defeated the imitation Black Butler, and Aroma later apologized to Haruka for failing to take her needs and feelings into consideration. He was even given an opportunity to get a pass on his exam for this, but he turned it down as he acknowledged he still had a ways to go. This was definitely one of the better one-off episodes, giving some much-needed development to the fairy mascots. So, no surprise, it was written by the fairy advocate Junko Komura. Yeah, looking back, this really does feel like the prototype for the relationships with the healing animals, which I think is great because I really do think the mascots should be more than just some cute plushies to sell. And thankfully, this pattern would continue for the remainder of the series, in particular by the end of this quarter. Though before we get there, we thankfully got a spotlight episode for someone other than the Pink. Yeah, thankfully, before things got a little too Haruka-centric, we finally got another Minami episode. One where she was able to show off just part of her family's money as they went to her brother's resort. Also, yeah, this episode was animated by our old friend Mitsuru Aoyama. I mean, it doesn't look too bad except for these long distance shots where the characters either became faceless or turned into Kohina from Kokuri-san. Anyway, the main focus of this episode was Minami's love for the ocean, having even befriended a dolphin that she had named Tina. This feeling was somewhat shared with her brother, though in his case, he wanted to use it as a means of connecting people through his resorts. Later, both would receive complaints from a certain fish girl who didn't want humans to hold any sort of dominion over the ocean. However, the siblings getting along like this ended up bothering Twilight for some reason, so she utilized both of her simps, and okay, the simplified faces actually kind of work here as that's a total mood. But yeah, as a result, the Precure once again had to deal with two Zetsuborgs at the same time. The main one being created from Minami's brother in the form of a very killer whale. Really never did get over his cartoon being cancelled. Real question, am I the only one who remembers this show? And the second one created from a vendor of, octopus. No, I'm with you too! I will not let this show go the way of SAO, you hear me? Okay, so we'll just focus on Minami for now, who was fighting the whales at Sporg in a losing effort as it held the advantage in the water. Fortunately, she got some backup from her dolphin friend, albeit hurting herself in the process. This made Minami remember her first time meeting with Tina, and how she had also saved her back then, leading to her love for the ocean. A nice and really cute scene that, more importantly, led to the discovery of the next dress-up key that was hinted at earlier in the episode. I'll get more into this McGuffin discovery a little later, but I'll say for now, I'm just glad that they found this at someplace other than Noble Academy for once. But rather, a far-off location that still thematically made sense as a place full of dreams like a luxury resort full of sea life. With that, they defeated both Zetsuborgs, and Minami reaffirmed her love for the ocean, which I'm sure won't come into play later. Following this, we got a also much needed Kiara episode where we even learned more about her mother. Hey, she does have the voice of Yuri, so it kind of works. But yeah, the mother and daughter were going to appear together in a fashion show hosted by Blonde, and okay, why are these hugging animations so needlessly detailed? But yeah, Irie, and no, I'm not gonna call her by her real name because I feel like I'm just gonna end up yelling it, was looking forward to walking the runway with her daughter. However, the kid herself was a bit of a nervous wreck at the thought of living up to her mother's status. Thus, to loosen her up a bit, she had the Precure spend the rest of the day with her. It was actually a pretty smart plan, as even though Kia was an overthinker, who in their self easily succumbed to her mother's obvious attempts of distracting her from the show, she did grow incredibly frustrated with Yuri, and her pent-up frustrations resulted in her venting to her friends about it. As a result, she didn't even have the energy to be tense the next day, but enough to pull off the show stress-free. Yeah, Yuri wanted Kia to get angry at her so that she would have no stress or anxieties the next day. It's a good lesson that really any parent or child should take to heart. You gotta let it out sometimes. In general, this was another good Junko Komura episode where I really appreciate the character development between the mother and daughter, as we even learned more about Kia's background, including who her father was. We also got some really good visual storytelling to boot. You can just feel the anxiety by how she walks. What wasn't quite as good was what came out during this fight. Oh, don't get me wrong, we still got the usual good fight animation and everything, but there were also just some little bits that bothered me as Twilight and Shut launched an attack. Yeah, if you think the 8th grade syndrome look looks good. Of course, they used Yuri as a vessel for the Grail, I mean the victim of the week, and somehow her dream produced 2 Zetsuborgs. Like, I kind of get thematically, as her dream was to walk down the runway with Kia, hence a mother and daughter Zetsuborg, but then why did the Haruno family only produce 1 Zetsuborg together? I'm just saying, the correlation between the dreams and the Zetsuborg quantities just kind of bothers me is all. That and where the new dress-up key for this episode came from. Yeah, obviously Kia obtained her miracle key, but for whatever reason, it was within her mother. So, like, was it in her the entire time or something? And if it was, then that's nowhere near as epic as finding it at the bottom of the ocean like with Minami. Again, don't get me wrong, I really like Komura's character writing, especially in this episode, but her world building has always made me ask more than a few questions than I should. Whatever, the stuff between Kia and Yuri more than made up for it, and they defeated the Zetsuborgs using Swift, so that's cool. And even though one dream was over, Yuri declared that her next one would be to see both of them become top models. Nice stuff. Following this, we justifiably got a Haruka episode after her friends had acquired their 3rd keys. For her, she would get her key while attending a book signing for the original author of The Princess of Flowers, Yume Mochizuki. Both Haruka and Yui were excited to see their favorite author. So basically, she's like the Alan Moore of picture books. Does she complain every time someone tries to adapt her work? We also finally learned about the actual story that Haruka seemed to be so infatuated by. The basic plot was about a princess who was loved by everyone, except for one bird who sold her out to an evil witch. He lured her into a trap saying that a prince was coming to see her, and yet the princess didn't blame the bird for his deception, resulting in him rescuing her out of guilt, and they lived happily ever after and all that. So yeah, obviously, the tale of the princess and the witch was meant to represent Haruka and the spear respectively, though I wonder who the bird was supposed to represent. But then getting stuff like that didn't bother Haruka, as she was more concerned about her ships. Really, Haruka? You're gonna be one of those fans. Anyway, Yui and Haruka got in line for the signing, and yep, the Alan Moore picture books. Also, nice touch using the sound effects of the love commune to represent the beating hearts of these two who likely were having some cardiac arrest. Anyway, Haruka met Mochizuki and asked her question, to which the author probably gave the standard answer she gave to most fanfic authors. She further elaborated by saying that she purposely left the ending open so that readers could find their own paths towards princessdom, or in more precise terms, adulthood. Of course, those words meant little to Twilight, who used a new key she had gotten from her mother to trap not just Mochizuki, but also all the civilians at the book signing, including Yui yet again. Also, I gotta point out another missed toy opportunity to create an evil version of the Princess Rods with this new key. Twilight's amazing smug face here makes me want to buy one, and I usually don't buy Precure stuff. For clarification, I won these in an eBay auction, mostly just for these reviews. I got a good price on them at least. Anyway, she didn't create a Zetsubort, but rather empowered herself with everyone's dreams. From there, we got one of the best fights of the series, not just because it had some of Nishiki Itoka's best work with some amazing choreography,
Frankensteiner from the top! Are you kidding me?
but it also had some great trash talking from Twilight, who was able to back up every single word.
品も才能も持ち合わせないあなたのような存在がプリンセスの名を
You can tell this girl has the original voice of Jolene Cujo before Minato took up the role. Interesting how two characters designed by Yukio Nakatani ended up playing two versions of a JoJo. But yeah, even the combined power of 3 dress-up keys weren't enough. Though to be fair, one of them didn't have their miracle key yet. And Haruka would end up finding her surprisingly close by, as after seeing the kind of princess Twilight was, she decided not to use her as the absolute example of what a princess should be, and in fact, using Mochizuki's words, she realized she needed to find her own path towards princessdom.
サイコロからずっと憧れてきたそれが私の目指すプリンセス
Alright, so I'm actually a little more okay with the location of this key than the last one at least. It has been established that the flower keys are attracted to Haruka, so it would figure that at least one of them would hide in one of her personal possessions. It does kind of add to the Haruka is the special issue I have with the show, but more on that in another review. Anyway, not only did she unlock a new, very unsubtle attack,
ユリよ
already got plenty of that in the show. They also got a new group finisher, complete with ribbons, allowing them to defeat Twilight. With that, the episode ended on a good twist, with Mochizuki turning out to be the principal of Noble Academy. And in general, this whole Miracle Key mini-arc was really well done. While I did have my personal nitpicks here and there, I do like how it all felt like each of the cures actually earned their keys by reaffirming each of their unique dreams and finding their keys in places strongly associated with said dreams. The keys themselves each had unique effects before leading to a powerful group finisher that was strongly established by using it to defeat an enemy like Twilight who got a lot of build up and didn't just feel like a throwaway monster of the week. Great stuff that almost makes up for them doing absolutely nothing with Twilight's armaments, including her wand, which was destroyed in this episode. And there's more to come. After all of that, both the Cures and the Animers got a little break with a more laid-back episode with everyone being stuck indoors due to the rain. There were still some very significant details, like Miss Shamor revealing that Kanta had a little sister, and I'm sure on a completely unrelated note, Twilight rode off on her Zetsuborg horse, her Zetsuborse if you will. And we also got a bit of a recap episode with the Girls Dorm participating in a scavenger hunt set up by Shirogane to have them reflect on how much they had all changed over the semester. It was good stuff showing how the Precure had had a positive effect on not just the normal students, but also the Cures themselves, with Minami and Kya both becoming more sociable, and Haruka's hard work getting her more admiration from everyone, and thus getting her closer to princessdom. I actually kind of wish we could have gotten more of this stuff in the episode, as Shut ended up launching yet another attack. And again, with this episode's animation, it just did not look good, especially by this show's high standards. Heck, even if they had good animation, just like that one PPG episode, I kind of wish we could have gone back to playing indoors instead of dealing with a stupid monster fight. Anyway, the major takeaway of all of this was that Twilight managed to find a 4th princess perfume hidden in another castle. Of course, episode 20 opened with Twilight showing her discovery to Despair and getting one last key from her. This one specifically designed to work with the perfume as a transformation trinket. And this is the moment I've been waiting for. As I mentioned earlier, they did make one Twilight key, this one specifically, and they cast it mostly in gold plastic. Yeah, not only was there a possibility that this thing could suffer from GPS if you know your Transformers toys, but it was also almost completely the wrong color except for the kind of butterfly in the middle. Fortunately, I'm into Gunpla building, and I just so happen to have some extra black spray paint lying around. Now try and tell me this doesn't look awesome. I'll admit, it's not a perfect job, and I certainly could work on my masking, but try and tell me, which of these would you rather buy? And ultimately, it does seem to highlight a significant issue with Precure merchandising. in that they seem to actively stray away from villain goods. Sad to say, I think they're under the impression that their target audience would be scared off by villain toys and or be a bad influence on them. Ignoring the fact that, as I said, they make villain roleplay toys for pretty much every evil rider and Sentai, and that characters like Regina and Dark Dream are a couple of their most popular side characters. I'm just saying, y'all are leaving a lot of money on the table by ignoring this stuff, which, you know, the show kind of needed. Anyway, what was happening in the episode itself? Guess I didn't use enough black. Back with the Precure, the keys they didn't have to pay teleported everyone, minus Yuri, to Hope Kingdom. They probably knew having her around would be game-breaking. Also, worth mentioning that this was the 555th episode of the Precure franchise aired, and charmingly enough, they tripled up on the go in the show's title, which in Japanese is a homonym for 5. If they had just invited the Volkinger and or Fives, then this would have been perfect. Anyway, the keys had transported them to the kingdom, having sensed the misusage of a perfume. And they didn't bother to teleport all the heroes into one spot because they needed to provide us with a little bit more of this ship. Be careful, guys. It looks like the Minami and Kya ships are coming in full force. To be fair, the keys did split them up for kind of a reason, in that they wanted them to meet with the spirits of their respective predecessors. Funny, you sound more like a voice from the future. Anyway, the spirits of the previous Princess Precure had created a 4th perfume in preparation for Despere's growing darkness, and yeah, it kind of had the opposite effect, didn't it? With that, they were given the task of retrieving the stolen perfume. Shut and Lock fought with Minami and Kya respectively to give these two a little more time alone, though at least for valid narrative reasons, as we learned a little bit more about Kanta's sister, who definitely does not have a well-known VA voicing her. Anyway, the sister named Towa had actually disappeared one day, and somehow this ended up depressing all of Hope Kingdom and left them open to an attack by Despair. So basically, y'all lost because you didn't have your princess? Not your actual leaders of the kingdom, or even someone that high up in the royal family. Again, Kanta was the older brother, but just the youngest daughter. Look, I do get the tragedy of possibly losing a young life and everything, but come on, even the Mushroom Kingdom is more self-reliant, and their princess is gone 90% of the time. They're just really playing this up is all I'm saying, and as a result, and I'm not kidding, this ended up earning Hope Kingdom the nickname of the Lolicon Kingdom from the Japanese fandom. God, I wish I was as creative as them. Regardless, it did lead to a nice scene between the two, as at the very least, Kanta had a good reason to be sad having lost Towa just before handing the key over to Haruka. With that, the Precure and Kanta regrouped at the main castle, where the doors had been left unlocked, as sure enough, Twilight was waiting for them, and in a truly shocking turn, she was in fact...
Towa.
Well, duh.
Also, you know you might have a bit of a sister complex if you don't mind taking a few fireballs from her. But yeah, Twilight's new key had completely taken her over, and also gave her a new transformation into, Nightingale's third ascension? Yeah, I guess if you're into mishmashes of Super Saiyans and the White Rock Shooter. The following episode immediately opened with the background on how we ended up here in the first place, with it turning out that Despair had tempted a young Towa to walk into her forest with the promise of turning her into a grand princess. And in a way, she did keep her promise, at the cost of brainwashing and manipulating her dreams for several years. And yeah, while I have expressed my issues with brainwashing plots as recently as with the Kira Major's big villain twist, it works for me here because there was build up to it, and it was used as a means of effectively building up the main antagonist of this show. Yeah, the thought of Hope Kingdom falling because of one princess is still silly, but at least it served a narrative purpose, being how the spear revived in the first place, and thus does tie into the show's main themes about the relationship between hope and despair. More importantly, it completely sends Despair far over the moral event horizon, as she admitted that she actually thought about throwing the innocent girl away after she was done with her, but instead she raised her not as a daughter, but rather as a pawn in her crusade. And people wonder why I object to Maleficent being treated like a motherly figure. To be more precise, she wanted to use Towa as a symbol of how an innocent yet narrow-minded dream could be warped into this. Because really, if the only thing you ever think about is the dream, then inevitably you will blindly walk into the forest of thorns.
希望だの才能だの憧れにしがみつくやつほど脆い赤身に登ろうと必死なやつってさそこから突き落とされた時のことを全然考えてないよね
This is what I mean when I say Precure needs more complete monster villains like this, as if anything, they can really punch some holes in a protagonist's beliefs. All too often, kids shows, including Precure, only ever encourage pursuing goals, dreams, what have you, but fail to bring up the faults in following such naive viewpoints. Now, Despair might be a bit of an over-the-top monster and everything, but the fact of the matter is, manipulators like this are a dime a dozen in real life. It's a strong message that doesn't coddle its audience and does show that there are significant consequences for making bad choices. Anyway, the Cures fought Twilight once again, and it wasn't quite as good as the first fight. I mean, it was still really well animated as usual, though honestly I was more interested in all of this lore building. That is until the second half when it became a one-on-one with Haruka. Oh, and this is also when I got that shot clip from earlier. Were you talking about Haruka or your own guy? But yeah, Haruka was able to recognize through her violin playing that Towa still existed deep within Twilight. This gave us a brief, though as always amazing Nishiki Itooka sequence before the Cures and Kanata managed to purify Twilight back into Towa. Dude, don't console me about your damn kinks. Not gonna lie though, this is one of my favorite faces in the whole series. Still, Despair wasn't in the mood for laughs, as her latest plan had failed on her home field. Thus, she tried to go full Sleeping Beauty climax, forcing our protagonist to make a strategic retreat. And after Kanta made this face, he tried to buy the Precure time to escape. Dude, seriously, are you trying to pull Kimihito and raise as many death flags as possible? Yup, he intended to stay behind to destroy the gate to prevent Despair from following them, and after raising about a dozen more death flags, he sent Haruka away. Don't get me wrong, this is still a great tragic scene that also makes Kanata look like a total badass. It's also just kind of hilarious if you've seen at least more than one Fate anime. Honestly though, I think I get a lot more emotion out of this one shot from the opening of the next episode, where Kanata is completely removed and a lone Haruka just stares off into the distance, perhaps with the minute hope that they'll meet again someday. It actually hits pretty hard, especially with the lyrics expressing the bond between the two. But yeah, speaking of the next episode, after the real main character of the show returned, they let Towa sleep in one of their rooms, I'm guessing Kya's judging by the Konjo Donut-kun doll. She was still being haunted by the memories of her time as Twilight, and okay, seriously, that black and purple variant of the perfume looks awesome. Come on, y'all did for the Walls art fold, so why not here? Anyway, she went out in her very conspicuous cosplay, and met with Haruka, who was playing her brother's song. She tried to give Towa her brother's violin, and yeah, she probably should have considered that might trigger someone who would obviously suffer from PTSD after being brainwashed for several years. Then again, a much worse trigger had already made her arrival. Despair, of course, tried to bring Towa back into the fold. Hamon, you have no right to talk about overly garish attire. That aside, they almost did too good a job at making this witch as creepy as possible, especially this literal flash step, accompanied by all of the plant life around her dying. All the while, she reminded Towa of her own sins. Again, I miss complete monsters like this in the franchise. But yeah, this was the big mid-season boss fight with the big bad no less, who managed to, okay, do we need to set up a Yui victim count for the show? Also, a great expression on Ronko here. But anyway, she not only drained the despair from some nearby civilians, but also used Towa as a despair battery. Naturally, the Precure were no match for her, but Haruka realized they might stand a chance if they rescued Towa again. With that, Minami and Kya provide backup with all of their keys. Again, great usage of the McGuffins of the show, and Haruka made her way to Towa. And of course, it did have to be Haruka who needed to do this, as while she certainly didn't go through as much as Towa had, she did also lose someone close to her that, while she tried to deny it earlier, probably knew that person was likely not coming back. Don't worry, we'll get to that in just a minute. But yeah, while despair is not easy to overcome, sometimes it helps if you have someone to share the pain with. And this was an amazing scene, where we could really hear the contrasting takes on Kanata's song. Haruka's having a more comforting yet kind of sorrowful tune, while Towa's was sad yet still had a slight glimmer of euphoria to it. And together, the two melodies created one complete song, making for yet another great hope and despair allegory for the show.
私はもう二度と絶望しない。
Wow, she was able to say that with neither of the Naegi siblings by her side. Side note, Tokumaru's best ship. Of course, Mommy Dearest didn't take this well, but fortunately, this only furthered Towa's resolve to start her quest to becoming a Grand Princess anew. Moreover, she already had a head start with the very keys Despair had given her, and yeah, I guess this is where the gold version of this key came from. This 1 second shot before it turned into something completely different. Seriously, y'all do realize that gold repaints are supposed to come out long after the originals, and preferably for things that take up more than 1 second of screen time? With all that said, it was time for a totally kick-ass debut.
真紅の炎のプリンセスキュアスカーレット
First, we got an amazing transformation sequence by Kazuhiro Ota. Can't wait till we get some of his other stuff later this season, complete with some of the best fire effects I think I've seen in this franchise. We then got an amazing Ken Ueno and Shingo Fuji collaboration as the new Princess of Flames effortlessly fought off Despair's shadows, all while some amazing violin music played that reminded me of Jubei-chan 2's theme. Criminally underrated magical girl samurai, by the way. And to top it all off, she turned her brother's likely priceless violin into a cheap toy. Whatever, this did at least lead into my favorite finisher of this show. Yeah, while I haven't been a fan of the CGI of the show, I'm not gonna pretend like these fire effects don't look amazing, especially that Karakawa Phoenix. But yeah, Towa managed to defeat the big bad of the series in her debut, and I'll admit, this does make her look a little overpowered, but to be fair, she managed to surprise Despair with her sudden transformation, plus she had already fought off the other Princess Precure for a while. That said, she definitely could have gone out with a little more style.
この力
Twilight!
Okay, I know this VA was 60 when the show aired, but come on, you guys couldn't have done a better take than that. Anyway, Towa recognized that Despair had only retreated to fight another day, but she could also sense that Kanata was alive too. Yes, Mr. 1001 Death Flags was somehow still alive. Maybe he really was trying to pull a Kimihito. Episode 23 opened with a really nice reunion between Towa and her servant fairies. In particular, Miss Shamor was able to show that she was more than just a mentor character, which was nice. Towa herself still needed to consider the events of the last episode and what she could do to save her kingdom, but no time for that, as her new teammates decided to take her on a shopping trip. Though to be fair, changing out of that cosplay she's worn for at least the past few episodes wouldn't be a bad idea. You ever try wearing the same outfit over the entire con weekend? It gets really uncomfortable by the last day. So, after getting her a much better outfit, most likely bought with Minami's credit card, they went on a fun little tour of the town that even resulted in a nice smile on Towa that she didn't want.
ホープキングダムを救うまで
楽しい思いなどしてはいけない。
Yes, understandably, she wanted to take her new role as a Precure seriously, not just because she wanted to save her kingdom, but also because she didn't feel worthy of a smile. I know I often say I like it when Precure take their job seriously, as it tends to also add a nice little bit of drama to the situation, but it is also a bit of a case-by-case basis. I would say Gold Princess's threat level is kind of in the middle, thus while Towa isn't wrong for wanting to be a little bit more proactive, she is also putting way too much on her plate, especially considering she just defeated the big bad of the series. You should be able to take at least a donut break after something like that. I really do like these moral debates where they discuss how far a hero should take their heroics, though it's also not gonna be the entire focus of this episode. Yeah, this is also a comedy episode, and it certainly didn't take long before the Mako piece took over the Sixth Ranger.
お城はあるかしら。お城？贅沢など家の立場。メイドは3人もいれ。
Well, to be fair, her entitlement isn't exactly all that above the average. But yeah, this was actually a good balanced way of showing how Towa needed to approach being a Precure. Taking the job seriously is fine, but unwinding and, more importantly, finding a comfortable place to sleep took priority at the moment. In the end, all sides of this argument were brought up in this episode, making for some great character work from everyone. This episode was also written by Junko Komura, and again, it does kind of feel like a prototype for some story elements that you would work into Healing Good later. Anyway, the other major plot point was Despair deciding to recuperate Inner Forest after her defeat at the hands of Towa, and also hopefully fix up her vocal cords.
Twilight!
As such, she left Locke in charge with a new power-up as well as sort of a villain clock, kind of like the heroes from Smile. Basically, it was a device that could collect despair energy even if the monster was destroyed. For its first victim, it ended up being Mochizuki, who had gotten to know a lost Towa. And yeah, this was technically the second time she had been a victim of the week, a fact that Towa knew all too well. She transformed and managed to handle the Zetsuborg on her own, but Locke's words, plus the new power-up, gave it the advantage. Fortunately, the rest of her team made the save, and...
みんなどんどん不幸になるんだね。そんなことない!
This was actually a good application of that phrase that unfortunately would be overused a little later. But yeah, Haruka's words, plus a sweet hug, managed to fully win her over to the team, making her realize that even if she did want to repent, she didn't have to do it alone. With that, she was given her new role on this team during the roll call.
美しく! Go! Princess Precure!
Like I said, that word is very important. With that, they defeated the Zetsuborg, and later, Mochizuki finally revealed herself to the team as the principal of their school, and even offered Towa a scholarship there, because yeah, I'm sure you could just give that stuff away to someone you barely know. Though to be fair, it was nowhere near as ridiculous as what happened to Locke at the end of this episode.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Episode 24, of course, focused on Towa's first day at school, and conveniently, she had also become Kya's roommate, giving the little princess someone familiar to get her used to the non-Disney kingdom life. To say the least, she had her work cut out for her. You could have also said that she was still going through her 8th grade syndrome, though thankfully it was nowhere near as terminal as it was. Anyway, Towa was still dead set on her mission, but now at least had lodging, as well as a human world alias, thanks to the principal, who again, I think is doing way too much for a stranger, but whatever. She also wanted to attend classes at Noble Academy, believing that they could help her focus on her life goals, which is a good in-story compromise for her goals, as well as a good message for the target audience. They also took this time to clarify that Towa's keys couldn't count towards the 12 keys they needed to restore Hope Kingdom, since they were essentially bootleg keys originally created by Despair. It also happened to give them a convenient excuse to sell more keys that wouldn't exactly fly off the shelves. This episode also featured the new roommates learning to get along, with one, as I said, acting as the straight man to the Mako Peace infectant. Yeah, again, there were some great jokes here, with Towa's royal charisma winning everyone over in spite of her fish out of water tendencies. That said, there were some great character moments, like with Kya, who in a bit of an inversion of the last episode, ended up pushing herself a little too much while Towa observed. Ultimately, it took the latter to mean that in spite of everything, she was still having a hard time reintegrating into society, having not only spent several years trapped in Despier's forest, but also now possibly suffering from culture shock being in a foreign kingdom. It's good writing that actually makes those earlier gag scenes make thematic sense. Fortunately, a little tickle session with Kia helped her relax a little, while simultaneously making her realize that she was pushing herself too hard. Oh yeah, and we also got a Monster of the Week fight with the new roided out Shut, whose Zetsuborg was, no comment. Could say the same about the fight itself, as you could probably tell, this was a Mitsuru Aoyama episode, which of course meant very limited animation, though this combo attack between Towa and Kia was pretty cool. Still, the episode ended on a nice note, with both roommates becoming far more casual with each other, and one even becoming a lot more self-reliant. Moving on to 25, we got the requisite Minami episode. It was summer vacation, and everyone was heading home for the break, though, sadly, Towa didn't have a home to go back to, but hey, let's sweep that depressing stuff under the rug and focus on Minami and all of her luggage. Pretty sure most of that was to help transition to moving in with the in-laws. And of course, they also decided to invite Towa along for the ride. With that, they made their way to Haruka's hometown that looked like it was just a stone's throw away from Skoyaka. And yet, Minami decided to show off her might to this little town.
すごい。
あら、ご丁寧に。
Yeah, how much do those mountains go for these days? And oh boy. Yeah, you can always count on Yoshimi Narita to take things to the absurd extreme. Insanely expensive fruits aside, they all still partook in the standard summer peasant activities, which confused the two certifiable princes of this team who ended up bonding as a result. Even more so when Towa admitted whenever the actual twilight time of the day occurred, she would remember her time as the villainess. She actually tried to hide this fact, but Minami recognized her distress as someone who also tended to keep things bottled up, which we'll address in the next part. Still, yeah, this is pretty much the same lesson as the previous episodes, of her still needing to learn how to rely on others, though at least her interactions with her team in this one were cute, especially when we got to revisit Minami's fear of ghosts. And the fight of this episode was at least better than the previous one, granted Aoyama's not a high bar to overcome. All that said, I think the actual most memorable part of all of this was Shut not overcoming his twilight depression, and even still kind of simping for her. I don't know what's creepier, this or his Shingetsu faces. Minami, of course, protected her and assured her that Twilight no longer existed and only her teammate and friend Towa was there. With that, they defeated the monster, and the episode ended on a bit of a strange note. I mean, nothing really objectionable, as Towa would put it, but I don't think we ever learned what was in Minami's last suitcase. To this day, it remains one of the greatest mysteries in all of anime. With that, we reach the last episode we'll cover for today. Having had her fill, Towa returns to the academy ahead of her friends, though obviously something was gonna go amiss. This episode also saw the opening getting a much needed overhaul. I mean, yeah, they still made little changes like the aforementioned removal of Kanata, as well as adding Mochizuki and Towa to the lineup. However, Towa was only in the lineup with no signs of Cure Scarlet throughout, and yet, for whatever reason, Twilight was still in it. So yeah, technically she appeared twice in the OP with a persona that had already been killed off. Thus, thankfully, they fixed this up by not including her in the initial run, instead just having her be on standby twice. Okay, they did shortchange her a little, but at least they added her to the parts of the OP that mattered. Other significant changes included shifting the opening to the second verse of the full song, adding a couple of new villains who we'll see in the next part, and finally removing Close's close up and replacing him with the roided out Lock. And yet, they still included him in this bit with him fighting Haruka. Like, come on, guys, he's obviously never coming back. I mean, what is he, like some kind of phoenix? They also sadly replaced the lineup with just this bit of the Cures walking with afterimage of all of the side characters behind them. I personally really liked it, as it did show how many people Haruka managed to connect with over the course of the series, but I also do understand why they replaced it, as it was getting crowded. Also, Puff and Aroma were wearing a few more accessories than usual, but I'm sure that won't play into anything. So anyway, this episode focused on the fairies as they took care of Towa, as after she briefly turned into a slender girl, she seemed to go into a bit of a high likely due to having a fever.
ちょっと寒気がして喉が痛むくらいですわ。
Too obvious. Besides, it was just a common cold brought up by her still adjusting to Japan's ridiculously humid summers. Seriously, put aside the fact that she comes from a fantasy kingdom, I don't think anyone could get used to Japan's summers, which are so humid it's like walking out into a sauna whenever you go outside. Anyway, the fairies did all they could to treat her, but also did the responsible thing and called for help from her friends. Nice little message here about how to take care of a sick person. Eventually though, it came down to just Puff after Aroma went to get some medicine from Miss Shamor. She acknowledged that she was a little in over her head, especially due to the lack of posable thumbs, but still was going to do all she could. This would especially be put to the test when Shut, frustrated at how almost no one was at the academy, decided to just settle for a cicada. Though to be fair, they are the harbingers of doom in Hinamizawa. Also, in order to replicate the usual glazed over look of the victim of the week, the animators put big googly eyes on the cicada, making it look almost as funny as the resulting Zetsuborg. To top it off, it made what I guess was supposed to be a cicada-esque buzzing sound, though it sounded more like a chicken with its usual Zetsuborg talk. I know I should find this annoying as all hell, but it's just so over the top that I kind of love it. I mean, I think it's just that perfect Jim Carrey level of annoying. Anyway, it led to a fight between it and Puff, who didn't want to wake up Towa. Shut probably put best. Eventually, Aroma joined in just as the Zetsuborg shed its skin, revealing a bigger, more powerful bug. Aroma tried to take it on alone, but Puff, having learned the importance of staying by someone's side, chose to stay. Thus, the two worked together to trap the bug. I best not see any furries in the comments section. Their plan worked, briefly, but even when the Zetsuborg shook it off, the fairies didn't give up, resulting in a transformation, I guess? I mean, they're cute outfits and everything, but they're not that much different.
But she's got a new hat.
Still, I guess it was only appropriate that we would end this video where we talked a lot about the importance of building up power-ups with this. Yes, as we would learn later, these were in fact upgrades for the fairies that they earned by showing their loyalty and dedication to their princess. This resulted in them getting new rejuvenation buffs for the cures, plus a little more power. Man, Bravebird got a serious downgrade after it made the jump to Shorted Shield. I mean, so did a lot of other attacks, but still. Regardless, it was super effective, and the Precure managed to rescue the insect. And the episode ended on a very cute note with the newly promoted fairies assuring Towa that they would nurse her back to full health. While this was obviously meant to be an advertisement for some new toys, like all of the power-ups in this part of the series, it did not at all feel intrusive because there was a narrative reason why the fairy siblings got them. And yeah, while it did come a little out of nowhere, it was in no way game-breaking, and more importantly, reflected their growth. We also got the second ED for this series, which, if you want to know my thoughts regarding it, feel free to check out my top ending themes list, which, yeah, just saying that should give you an idea of how amazing I think it is. But yeah, you could say that the fairy upgrades, along with these keys, led to a ton of character development, as they acted as punctuation marks to them rather than just toy commercials. Granted, this show could have used a lot more of them. Looking back on it, this was probably one of the strongest quarters of the series, and not just for obvious reasons that we'll get to in just a second, but also for being pretty darn effective with their time. Almost every episode played at least some significance to the greater narrative, be it through character development that would actually pay off later, introducing significant side characters, or giving some meaningful reasoning behind the new power-ups. Every time the Cures got new keys, not only did they at least look fairly impressive and were unique from their other powers, but they also felt earned as opposed to
There's a simple explanation for that.
And of course, a lot of these moments were also centered around the build-up and eventual debut of Towa. While the twist of her being Kanta's brainwashed little sister was easy to see from a mile away, even if you're not familiar with Sixth Ranger tropes, it was still very enjoyable to watch, as Twilight was a pretty great antagonist in her own right. Yeah, personally I consider Towa and Twilight to be separate characters since they are very different personalities. Some bits of Towa were there, but otherwise, she was an ever-loyal daughter to the Spear, who always thought that she was both a true princess and beloved by her mother, more than Haruka to her family. Yeah, that latter one was probably debatable. Following that up with the horrifying effects it had on Towa that really played up her damaged psyche, and I gotta say, they pulled off this dark story about brainwashing really well without going too overboard. My only minor issue with all of this was the preceding intro episodes for the new teammate. Yeah, a lot of it was still cute and pretty damn hilarious at times, but they also involved a lot of Towa learning the same lesson, rely on her new team. Not a bad lesson, and again, you won't learn this stuff immediately, but to have it basically be said 3 times in a row is a little much. Still, an overall fantastic intro for our Sixth Ranger and a bunch of meaningful power-up items. There's more to come of that, as well as some returns starting next time. However, that unfortunately will have to wait a little while, as not only am I going to be busy with my big move, but I'm also thinking of doing another Toy Trinity video. Yeah, some of my recent videos have led me to some interesting research that I do want to share with all of you that highlight the importance of not just Sentai to Precure, but also a certain comic book god who definitely deserves to be brought up in depth when discussing multiple toy properties. Look forward to it, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and are there birds in this condo now?